This week on the Rat Rod Project, I'm going to dive right into working on suspension for the front and rear, and I'm going to start by cutting up some old leaf springs I have so we can try to build a quarter elliptical suspension for the front and rear of the Rat Rod Project. So let's go ahead and dive into some time lapses and then we'll talk about it afterwards. So let's talk about all that we've done on the suspension this week. So, firstly, what I went ahead and did is I took an old set of leaf springs, and in that first time lapse on the video, you'll see me chopping that set of leaf springs not quite in half, like 2/3 of the spring with the center drilled hole there, and then like a a single third for the rear springs. And once I chopped down those leaf springs, I was then able to stack them. And I started with the stack you can see here on the bottom. That's a 3-spring stack. And once everything got all set up on this front suspension and I had it on the weight of the engine and the car, I realized it was sitting way too low. So at that point I cut more springs from other springs I had lying around, and I added a long leaf here and then 3 of the smaller leaves on top, and then a longer bolt to attach all of them together. And then this is plated under here, which allows for strength and kind of holds everything together. So the first 3 springs slide into that boxed plate setup. And then the other ones, the 4 on top, sit on top of that with the bolt through. And then I made a cage here to prevent them from shifting side to side and keep them compressed together. And that compiles the spring pack for the front. And then after that, I went ahead and used the torch and cut myself out these plates here, which mount to the front axle. And then I cut myself out a set of plates for both sides that allow me to attach this rod end piece. And actually, these bars, the 2 in the front and the 2 in the rear suspension, which we'll look at here in a little bit, are out of a 4-link kit for like a 4-link suspension, which gave me 4 24-inch long bars, my rod ends, and all my hardware, and then a bunch of brackets I was able to cut down and modify to set up the suspension the way I wanted it to be. And the really neat thing about this is that this is a standard thread and a reverse thread on this bar. So if I loosen the lock nut on both sides, I can increase or decrease the length of this rod, which allows me to control my geometry for my suspension. Right now I have the front set up so that this plate and the axle is essentially level. But if I need to, I can change my angle frontward or rearward based off of just that bar. And that's pretty cool because that gives me a variety of options as far as setting up the front geometry for alignment and changing the spring rate by adding springs up here and taking springs away. And that allows for just a lot of adjustment in the front end. And then this whole bracket system in the back here is all plated and boxed. And I've got the rod coming off the bottom here, and then it's gusseted into the frame this way and gusseted across the back as well. You can see how that's all plated in and welded in. And this makes for a really strong mount point for the front suspension on both ends of it. Now as we move to the back of the car, inside I did the opposite for the rear suspension. I actually have my bar on top and my spring underneath. And once I set the rear suspension up, I determined that it was sitting a little too high in the back. And I was able to control that height by building a block, which you can see right here, to space out the springs from underneath, which allowed me to lower the car so that I have the right ride height front and rear. You can see the drive line is all free and clear, and we've got plenty of room underneath the rear diff. And again, with these bars in the back, I have adjustability so I can change my pinion angle on the rear differential based off of the bars. Now, I also made these brackets in the back here from some of the kit pieces that came with that 4-link setup, and then I was able to weld those into the original diff that I used out of the Love truck that matches the front transmission and engine in the front. So now I've got the full rear suspension as well as the full front suspension, and it came out really clean overall. I really like the look of it. As you can see from the front, it's got a nice kind of old school look to it. Stylish but functional. You can kind of see if I flex. Not super easy to pick up on camera, but it's got some good suspension in the front. And then nice ride height in the rear. And you can see the cool frame brackets protruding from the bodywork on both sides, which is pretty neat. Now, another thing that was really cool in the last little bit is I was able to go ahead and get a hold of a set of tires that I was able to stick on these rims that I had gotten. These are old Chevy wire wheels from like 1930s, 6-lug wire wheels. And I was at work and happened to change out tires on a customer car, and they didn't want the old tires because, as you can see, they're dry rotted and cracked. But they make for a good option for roll around, and because they're a tube type tire, I was able to go ahead and install those on the rims, and that allowed me to set the suspension up the way I wanted it to be and get a real clear idea of what things are going to be like. Now, eventually I'll have to go ahead and replace these tires with a new set of tires for it to work correctly and be safe. But for now, they work well for the setup of this vehicle. And the other thing that's nice about them is that they're quite a bit taller than the old tires that were on there, which again affected my ride height overall and set things up the way I wanted it to be in the final dimensions of the car. And I think they're going to look pretty sweet on there. Not everybody likes the bias ply wheels and tires, but I kind of like the look. And for this car being little like it is, you probably won't notice a whole lot of inconsistency going down the highway, especially since it's low, like it's going to be. So that's a pretty cool setup front to back. And now that we've got all the suspension in there and I know what the ride height's going to look like, I can go ahead and continue on some more important bodywork things. The next big item is going to be going ahead and building a hood for it. So I have an old hood. I think we've looked at it before. It's sitting over back here. Old louver type hood that I'm going to cut up and modify to go on in place of the opening here. And that'll probably take some pretty heavy modification to get that hood to fit. I haven't decided if I'm going to continue to set it up like the original hoods on these were, where they're sort of butterfly and they kind of fold up and onto themselves. That hood is set up that way, but I may make it so the sides are fixed and the top is just a single piece that tips open to one side or the other. I haven't really decided yet, but as I start to cut the hood up and modify it to fit the opening, I'll get a clearer idea of how I want to go with that. Pretty great to finally see this thing come into full suspension. It's nice that it rolls on its own. I'm going to also have to go ahead and address the steering as well at some point. I haven't made a decision as to what kind of steering box I want to use. Because the car is so lightweight, I'm probably going to go with manual steering on it. This front tie rod is pretty banged up and bent, so I'm going to have to replace that or straighten it out. And as you can see, the front steering arm here is pretty short, and my box is going to have to be pretty far back, probably somewhere in this location. So this arm's going to have to change, and the steering arm's going to have to change for whatever manual steering box I choose to go with. So we'll see what that turns out to be down the road a little bit. But like I said, the next big step is probably going to be building a hood for it. But now we are in rolling chassis form, which is pretty great. So this time we've had a lot of really great progress on the Rat Rod project. It's really great to see it in rolling chassis form, having been able to put the suspension together in the front and the suspension together in the rear. Really sets up the car in a way that I can see exactly what it's going to look like as it comes together along the process. And it's nice that the way I've set it up, there's a lot of adjustability. Because of the stacked spring pack in the front, I can add more springs or take springs out, which will change my ride height in the front. And in the rear, I can change that block that I showed you in the previous video to be either taller or shorter to change the ride height in the rear, making it really easy to adjust it for whatever application I end up using it for in the end. I really like where it's at ride height right now, and that's kind of where I'm going to try to set everything up to match. But it's nice to be able to change that later if I want to. And now that the suspension is all together, I can focus on some other important projects like setting up the steering and getting the hood together. And that'll really line the rest of the car out and make it so that I can move forward with the project. So again, it's really like a big milestone for me to get it into the suspension system all set up and rolling. Really excited about it. And it was a lot of fun to make the time lapses, get the torch out, make some special custom pieces. And again, it's really great to have you guys checking out the videos, and I appreciate you watching. And go ahead and stay tuned next time and see what we can get up to on the Rat Rod in the future. Until then, you guys have a good one out there, and enjoy your summer.